Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for braving the weather to make it here this evening. I wish us all a safe trip home later. I am your chair, Councillor Eleanor Rollins, and I'm welcoming you to this full council on October the 16th, 2024. I'd like to welcome all of you here, and to any members of the public, welcome also, and also anybody watching online. Now, health and safety announcement. If the fire alarm sounds, it is definitely not planned, so please leave the building by the nearest exit, which may be behind you, and follow the green running man signs above the doors. Make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting, who is Andrew Milhirsch, will tell you when it's safe to return. The meeting can be viewed live online on the Council's YouTube page, and it will be recorded for future delectation and viewing. The agenda and papers have been published on the Council's website and circulated in advance of the meeting. Could I please request that any member referring to any item within the agenda also cite the page numbers so that everybody can find their way quickly, and everybody watching online can do this also. Please only speak when I ask you to speak. If I ask you to stop speaking, please stop speaking. Please switch the microphone on your desk before speaking and then turn it off again afterwards. And turn any mobile devices to silent or to airplane mode right now, please. We were going to start by doing the roll call, but you will notice that there's an absence next to me. That's because Councillor Wragg is unwell and so cannot attend. So I'm going to ask a vice chair to stand up from the room, and I have already asked Councillor Mike Howe whether he would, and I need your approval and your vote to formalise that. So if you are all happy with Councillor Howe stepping up as vice chair for the evening, would you please raise your hand now? I think that's pretty unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Howe, would you please make your way up to the top table? With or without the hat, we're not fussy. While we move on to the rest of this bit. So we're now going to start by doing a roll call, but because of the wonders of our modern technology and the fact that it takes a few seconds to locate people, we thought that given that later in the agenda there is an item which will concern pretty much everybody, and that we all probably need to make a declaration on it, and that is the winter fuel allowance motion. You will have seen the email from Melanie about making it an effects NRI, whether you're on receipt of it or whether you know somebody who is in receipt of it. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to roll the roll call and the declaration of interest into one, so that the camera has time to see each of us up making our declarations of interest. So I expect that most people will make the same declaration. If you have a declaration about that winter fuel allowance motion, it is an effects NRI that you'll be declaring, whether it's you yourself who are in receipt of it, or whether it's a family member or even a parent or a grandparent. Okay, right. So we're now, if you want any advice on declarations, please always refer to Melanie, who is our monitoring officer, and she can advise you on anything. If you have any other declarations of interest or anything else on the agenda, please also make them at this time. Or if you become aware sometime during the meeting that you should have made a declaration, don't be shy, come forwards, make it then. It's better to do it than not do it. Right, so we are therefore going to roll items 1 and 2 into one. And for this, I'm going to hand over to Andrew Milhirsch to call us all in alphabetical order and ask us whether we're here and what our declarations of interest are. Over to you, Andrew.
Okay. Let's hope this works successfully. So, Councillor Arnott, if you could please confirm if you are present and if you have any declarations of interest.
Not yet. There we go. That's on. Councillor Paul Arnott, Scorpio, 62. No need to declare any interests present.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Bailey.
I'm considerably older than 62. I am here, and I declare whatever the chairman said regarding the winter fuel payments. Thank you.
That would be an effects NRI then, Councillor Bailey. Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Jess Bailey.
Present, and I would like to declare an effects NRI for motion 1, probably because relatives may well be in receipt of the winter fuel allowance. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. Councillor Ian Barlow, please.
Present and no declarations that I'm aware of.
Councillor Kevin Blakey.
Present, and a declaration affects NRI on the motion 1 as a recipient. Thank you.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present and affects NRI on agenda item 15, motion on winter fuel allowance. Thank you. Just something first.
Councillor Bonetta.
Present affects NRI on motion 1, as I believe relatives may be in receipt of winter fuel allowance.
Councillor Colin Brown.
Yeah, present and the NRI on the winter fuel allowance.
Councillor Jenny Brown.
Present affects NRI on item 15.
Present and affect NRI.
Councillor Burrup.
Present and affects NRI for item 15.
Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Bethany Collins.
Present and affects NRI for item 15 with relatives in receipt of the winter fuel allowance.
Councillor Roy Collins.
I've been paid the fuel allowance and I'm present, and I think it's ridiculous what you're doing here. Does that mean if we have a television and you have to have a
Councillor
television
Collins,
licence and we
Councillor
have to be
Collins,
speaking
this
about
isn't-
the BBC, we have to
Councillor
declare an
Collins,
interest?
I'm afraid this is not the right item for grandstanding. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Present, and I have an affects NRI on item 15, having been in receipt of the winter fuel allowance in the past.
Councillor Dumper.
Yes, present, and also affects NRI on the winter fuel allowance. Not yet old enough to claim the £300.
Councillor Faithful.
Present, affects NRI, item 15, relative.
Councillor Fernley.
Present and affects NRI on family member receiving winter fuel allowance.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present, Chair, and affects NRI on motion 1. I have been before in receipt of the winter fuel allowance. Thank you.
Present and affects MFI on item 15.
Councillor Haggerty.
Present and affects recipient of motion item 15, motion 1, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present and affects NRI, motion 1, item 15.
Present affects NRI, agenda item 15.
Councillor Hayward.
Present and affects NRI in respect of motion our agenda item 15 and agenda item 22, home safeguarding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heath.
Present and affects NRI on point 15.
Councillor Hookway.
Present, affects NRI, agenda item 11, member of Exmouth Town Council, and also our agenda item 15, previous recipient of winter fuel allowance.
Councillor Howe,
Present and affects NRI on item 15.
Councillor Ingham,
Present and affects NRI on item 15.
Councillor Jackson,
Present, affects NRI on item 15, bound to know someone.
thank you. Councillor Jeffreys,
Present and affects NRI on item 15.
Thank you. Present, and I agree with Councillor Jackson. I'm sure I probably know somebody within East Devon for motion 15, agenda item 15, motion 1, so I would declare an NRI. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here and I declare an NRI, an FX NRI for the fuel allowance. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp, Councillor Ledger.
I'm present and affects NRI with agenda item 15. A family member is in recipient of winter fuel payment.
Councillor Veen,
Present and affects NRI on item 15. I'm old enough to be my second childhood.
Present, affects NRI, item 15.
thank you. Councillor Martin,
Present and affects NRI re item 15.
Councillor McCullum,
Present and affects NRI on item 15.
Present and affects NRI motion 15.
Councillor Olive,
Present affects NRI item 15.
Councillor Riddell,
Present and affects NRI for item 15.
and the Chair, Councillor Rylance.
Present, affects NRI, family member is in receipt of winter fuel allowance. Thanks.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Toy,
Present, NRI declare on motion 1 have relatives who are receiving the allowance.
thank you. Councillor Westerman,
Present, affects NRI on item 15.
and Councillor Whibley.
Present and in effect NRI on item number 11 as a member of Exmouth Town Council.
Thank you, councillors. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you will have noticed that sometimes our camera is not lining up with the right people. It appears that the right people's names are being displayed on the screen, but random images are appearing for some cameras. So we're just having a little debate to see if we think it might be sortable. If it's not sortable, then we'll just have to soldier on like brave soldiers. If it is sortable, we might go to a 5-minute adjournment to see if we can actually sort it out. Can't sort it out. The glum faces to my right tell me that we're just going to have to be brave soldiers. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies. I forgot to give Aurora's apologies for this meeting.
We haven't got, you can give them in a moment, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to have to soldier on with the right names on the screen, but not the right faces at times. So we will sort it out in time, but not this evening. Right, so moving on to item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting. If I can just wake my iPad up again. Does anybody have any amendments or comments that they wish to make or bring to bear upon these minutes? I see no hands raised, so I'm going to presume that that is the green light for me to sign the minutes as a true record of what happened last time, which was the 17th of July 2024, a very, very long time ago, it turns out. So are you, we need to vote on these, don't we? We need to vote, yes. So if you're in agreement with me signing these minutes, can you just raise your hand now, please? Thank you, that's pretty much carried. Thank you. Right, so I will sign those in a bit. public speaking. Now, I know that we have one person registered to speak in the public session, but that they are not present. So I believe that they have sent a text for Andrew to read out. So I think Andrew will now read out that text. I think it's the Exmouth Community Association. No.
Yes, that's correct,
Have we
Chair.
not done apologies for absence? We have not done apologies for absence. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tracy. We have not done apologies for absence. My bad, as they say. Does anybody have any apologies for absence that are not about to be told to us by Andrew? Andrew, who do we already have on the list?
I already have Councillor Aurora Bailey, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Chubb, Councillor Fitzgerald, Hartnell, Hawkins, Hughes, Loudon, Nicholas, Parr, Richards, Rickson, Wilson, and finally Councillor Ragg. Thank you, Chair.
So are there any other people that you know of who are not here who have sent apologies?
Yeah.
Oh, Councillor Arnold?
Thank you. From Councillor, I didn't hear Councillor Kemp or Councillor Smith, but they've.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
That's Councillor Kemp and Councillor Smith. Thank you very much. Right, moving on. We've done the minutes. Only apologies. Public speaking. I'll just wait for Andrew to collect himself. Okay, Andrew.
Yes.
So do you have something from Exmouth, I think?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a statement from the Exmouth Community Association, which relates to the winter fuel allowance motion. And the Exmouth Community Association wishes to ask East Devon Council's Revenues and Benefits team to investigate the possibility of the council using a further line of funding in its budget for the purpose of mitigating the planned scrapping by the government of the winter payments to our pensioners. We realise that such measures may, in addition to the government's proposed extension to the household support fund provided to councils. However, like many in the Exmouth community, we are shocked that the government's plans mean that so many pensioners will most likely lose up to £300 a year, which works out that they face a loss of more than a week's pension income. This is at a time when Ofgem has announced that the energy price cap is set to increase by £149 this winter. It has been indicated that such action will plunge many East Devon pensioners, of whom around 30% make up the population, into a deep sense of worry, combined with ultimately a serious risk of ill health and a threat to life. We share the view recently expressed by DCC on the 5th of September and subsequently noted by the charity Age UK that the government has set the threshold at which pensioners do not qualify for winter fuel payments far too low. Age UK carried out their own impact assessment and found that 4 in 5 pensioners already on the edge of poverty would be stripped of the payments despite the government's assertion that low-income retirees will be protected. Only those receiving a pension of less than £218.15 a week or £332.95 a week for couples are eligible for pension credits. This is significantly lower than the living wage rate. In addition to this suggestion, we ask that EDDC continues to make every effort to increase awareness of benefits such as pension credit to those residents in East Devon to ensure people are aware of the support they are entitled to. We understand that your motion at agenda item 14 will debate this topic in greater detail, and we wish you much success. We hope that by the end of this debate, EDDC will emerge with a clear financial and social policy strategy to present to its residents, the community groups, that going forward all pensioners in our district will receive the much needed help and assistance they require. And that's come from the chair and members of the Exmouth Community Association. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Okay, moving on to item 5, matters of urgency. There have been no matters of urgency to put onto the agenda. Item 6, announcements from chair and leader. Right, I have 2 announcements. One of the announcements is that Councillor Hawkins and his wife are the brand new parents of a baby boy, so I want to send congratulations to them. And I think they might be watching online, so hello Sam and hello baby. So the other thing I wanted to say is that we have 3 motions on our agenda, and if each of us spoke just for 3 minutes, we would be here for 9 hours. So please, please, I'm beseeching you, be as swift as you can in your interventions. Don't repeat things that have already been said. You can show your appreciation for something that's already been said by voting for it later. Because I don't want to be here till 3 a.m. I mean, there's a chance the rivers might have gone down again by then, but that's not a chance I really want to take. And, you know, some people need to get back a long way. So that's all I have to say. Leader, what, do you have to say anything to say? You do not have a half hour. Okay, thank you very much. That's very swift of you. Item 7, confidential and exempt items. We have 4 items to be treated in such a way. So they, at the end of the meeting, there will be a part B, which you'll be required to stay on for. I'm afraid it's not time to pack up. So item 8, questions. We have 8 questions here. You have presumably all had responses to these questions. Are there any follow-up questions? Question 1 is from Councillor Hughes, but I don't think he's here, is he? So I presume there's no follow-ups to that. Question 2 is Councillor Faithful. Do you have any follow-ups?
Yes, Chair. I see in the leader's answer, he's avoided answering my question. So I would like to first point out that based on the present government's policy, our numbers should be 380,000 houses per year, 1,500 houses per year for East Devon. So isn't that rather NIMBYism? If we want less houses, we want 380,000 houses per year across the country, but we don't want them here.
So are you happy to answer that? Yes, please go ahead, Councillor.
Well, thank you, Councillor Faithful, for the question. I don't think I avoided answering it. No, it's not NIMBYism. I think what just about every member of this council either has said already at various meetings or believes is that these target numbers are unhelpful in as much as they put the cart before the horse. However, what we as a council are doing at the moment, by agreement, by policy through strategic planning, is working to that lower number of roughly 950, I think, glancing to Councillor Olive for a thumbs up. Whereas if we hadn't, it's about 950 a year, isn't it? Yes. Whereas if we had simply adopted what the government was suggesting we do at scale and hadn't moved quickly to get our local plan completed, touch wood, by the end of the year, we were looking at something nearer 1,250. So that isn't NIMBYism. The argument is, and I think I put it in the answer, we need to try and persuade government, and we did try and persuade the former government, we need to try and persuade government collectively to look at key issues like infrastructure first, and also particularly the nature of the housing we want. And what we are suffering as a council here, as you know, is the affordability factor, where the more we build, the more houses go for £400,000 or £500,000, the less affordable they are for local people, the more we're asked to build. And it hasn't actually, it hasn't addressed the solution of genuine housing need. So I think my own personal view, and I think I was explicit about it in the answer, is I actually don't think the numbers are a helpful guide. But nevertheless, we are as a council working to the ones we're required to work to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Right, the next 5 questions are all Councillor Goodman. Councillor Goodman, do you have any follow-ups for any of these questions? So are you going to tell me which question it is, bit by bit?
Yep.
After one by one.
Question 3. First of all, thank you, Councillor Ledger, for your answer. And obviously, they are very concerning figures. Can you tell me what action the service has taken to remedy the issues?
Yeah, of course. So we're one of the few services within the council that has a housing. We've got a lead that is set for housing improvement. So Amy Gilbert-Jeans is looking into each individual complaint that we receive, if there are any service improvements that can be made, and if there is anything that's gone wrong, how we then rectify that moving forward. I think it is something that the council is looking to bring in across all of its services, but we are definitely the forerunner within that.
Thank you, Councillor Ledger, who does not have a name either. Your name didn't appear either. Okay, Councillor Goodman, any more follow-ups?
Yeah, on question 4, again, thank you very much, Councillor Ledger, for your answer. Social housing is important, and I'm delighted that Leader mentions it in his answer to Councillor Faithful. Can I ask that when we're presenting our strategy in April and going forward, that consideration is given to social housing and the numbers, which are different than actual affordable homes? Thank you.
Councillor Ledger?
I didn't really get the question in that.
Councillor
was more
Goodman,
of
I
a
think,
statement.
was
Sorry.
asking that we focus on social housing. I think that's probably, yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's more a question for Councillor Olive sat next to me. The vast majority of affordables delivered in the district come through the planning process. It's something that we're definitely looking at within the housing service, but most of our delivery comes through planning obligations. So it's definitely something for the local plan to be focusing on, because that's where we're going to get the meat of really the social housing coming forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ledger. Councillor Goodman?
Question 5, let me just question 6.
Oh, microphone, please. Yeah.
Question 6. Again, thank you, Councillor Wade, for the answer. But I ask, does he not think that when a decision is made by Council or Cabinet, that actions are delivered? And if not, Council are informed why and what actions are being taken to deliver? Noting that in the reply, there are a number of issues that were not addressed, including things and not completed, including health and safety and disabled access.
Councillor Hookway, did you capture the question from that?
Okay.
Could you, yeah, because Councillor Hookway is a little hard of hearing. So
Right. Okay. Well, basically, in the reply I had, the first point is: does he not think that when council agree a strategy and action, that they deliver that, and if not, to bring it back to council to update them on where we are? And in your reply, you don't talk about there were a number of issues that weren't done. 2 I just mentioned is 1, health and safety, and also the issue of disabled access. Those 2 have not even been started, and they should have been done in 22-23. Thank you.
Well, firstly, thank you for your question. The leisure strategy is a 10-year strategy, and progress has been, I think, acceptable considering the constraints that we've had to deal with. You'll notice the comment about the new leisure officer being appointed and starting next month, and also the issues regarding the dual use sites, which has been a very significant challenge and has taken a number of years, 2 years at least, and will take more to resolve. So I'm perfectly happy with the progress that we've made so far. I don't see any point in bringing it back. Please be aware that the Leisure Strategy Forum, as it's now called, will address any further questions that you have. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor Hookway. Councillor Goodman, any further follow-ups? Thank you very much, Councillor Goodman. That was short and sweet, shortish and sweetish. Right, moving on swiftly to, where are we? Oh, crumbs. Okay, reports from the Cabinet and Council's committees, which is all of item 9. So as per our new way of doing things, we are going to take these all en bloc and then talk about the recommendations separately underneath. So unless you have any comments or things that you'd like to comment on within item 9, then we're going to speak about the recommendations anon. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. So if anybody has any comments about any of the minutes that are in item 9, would you please raise your hand to speak? Because otherwise we shall just note them and move on to item 10. So we're not, because there are no recommendations within those that are not addressed later. We don't need to vote on the minutes anymore. So we just note them and move on. So I don't see anybody wishing to intervene, so I'm going to presume that we can move on to item 10, which is recommendations from the Housing Review Board of August the 1st, 2024. Now, Andrew, I see that you're down to present the report. Are you able to do that right now?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So this is a report with recommendations from the Housing Review Board from the 1st of August, where there was a discussion around increasing the councillor membership on the Housing Review Board to add capacity. And this will then, if supported by members this evening, the board will become 7 members. There will also be a further review of the terms of reference of the Housing Review Board as part of the overview and scrutiny improvement plan. So this evening you are being asked if you're happy to support increasing the membership to 7 members on the Housing Review Board. There will be no change to the number of tenant and leaseholder representatives or the independent community representatives. So it's just an increase by 2 councillors on the Housing Review Board.
Thank you, Andrew. Members, do you have any comments or things that you wish to talk about within this report? Councillor Goodman.
I would just say
And
that
then
I think it's
Councillor
essential that we enhance the Housing Review Board. We have a lot of issues with housing, and increasing the membership can only help that committee, which is overstretched. And I certainly support this.
Councillor Jackson, please, next.
I was simply going to propose a recommendation, but happy to second.
We have a proposal from the floor. Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey, what would you like to say?
Thank you, Chair. Declare an interest. I'm a tenant of East Devon.
Okay.
I'm quite surprised to see that instead of 4 meetings a year, we're now going down to 3. Well, considering as Councillor
I think it's
said,
5 to 4, Councillor Bailey. And there's a very
Pardon?
good reason. It's 5 to 4, but there's a very good reason for that to happen as well.
well, if you could enlighten me, I'd be most grateful. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe that the reason is that there are certain KPIs that occur quarterly, and the idea is to have the HRB meetings in advance of the KPIs being due.
So we're more informed.
Yep.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so does that answer your question? Okay, fantastic. So the idea was that if more were needed, then they could be arranged ad hoc, but the fixed points would be where the KPIs are due. Councillor Barlow, please.
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, good. We have a proposer and a seconder. Any more comments? Okay. Are you all happy to go to the vote? Right. How do we? Yeah. Do we vote using? We just vote by hands. Okay, we're still voting by show of hands. The technical wizardry does not extend to voting, I'm afraid. So if you're in favour of this recommendation, would you please raise your hands now? If you're against it, please raise your hands now. And if you wish to abstain, please raise your hand now. And that is largely carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 11, which is, hang on, if I can get the right page in my script, that would be even better. Recommendation from Cabinet about placemaking in Exmouth Town and Seafront Group. Now then, who is presenting this? Because there is, it was Simon, you were going to talk about this, I think, weren't you?
In the script, it seems to be me for some reason. Yeah. Sorry, Chair. If this is item 11.
This is the placemaking one.
Yes. Well, apparently you're inviting me to present this recommendation. I thought it might be Nick, to be honest, but because it is committee.
Nick, would you like to present this recommendation, Councillor Hookway?
Yes, happy to, Chair, yes. So looking at the report, I'm sure you've had a chance to read the report, you'll see there have been a number of next steps that have been recommended by officers. These include refinement of the draft plan, including service areas, not only in East Devon but also Devon County Council and Exmouth Town Council, moving also to having a clear implementation plan, having a new and a more effective programme management, and also developing the UK SPF budget to develop options for the Queen's Drive and the beach gardens. We need the 40k to commission a WSB to support these next steps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hookway. Right, are there any comments, questions? Councillor Dumper first and then Councillor Barlow, please. Have you logged into your microphone, Councillor Dumper? You have.
Yeah. It was just somebody else had theirs on. I was just going to ask whether, because a couple of Exmouth Town Councillors have declared an effects NRI on that last item, but the rest of us didn't. So in case I need to, I declare that I'm an Exmouth Town Councillor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dumper. Who was next? Councillor Barlow, I think, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, I've had, believe it or not, people from Exmouth ringing me up saying that you're doing more plans and this, right? And I just wonder if there was any timescale of when anything would actually happen on the ground in Exmouth for the people of Exmouth.
Is there a timeline, Councillor Hookway?
Thank you for your question. The most immediate timeline is the work on the Queen's Drive and the Beach Gardens. Those particular projects have been out to tender. We are awaiting the final decision on who's got the tender, and then members of the placemaking group will be asked for their opinions and then make a recommendation to Cabinet, and we hope that is done by end of the year. In terms of the actual timeline, as I said in the last placemaking meeting, it is it is really important that we get the process right, and that does take time. We must have the process right, otherwise we will get a legal challenge, and that will delay matters even more. But we are moving, and we are getting there. Things are improving, and we will eventually have a full placemaking plan. But I'm not going to put a date on it. That would be irresponsible of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Councillor Gazzard was next. Are you sure it's something different that you're about
And it
to
wasn't
say?
anything different. It was just asking, would they possibly see anything happening in 2025? Is that realistic to say?
I think Councillor Hookway just answered that question, Councillor Barlow. Well, he did answer it. He said he didn't want to put a precise date on it because the legalities have to be gone through first. Right, Councillor Gazzard, I think, was next, and then we had, who was next after Councillor Gazzard? And then, okay, so Councillor Gazzard first, and then Councillor Bailey.
No, I didn't indicate I wish to speak on this one, Chair.
Councillor Hall, which, Councillor Anne Hall or Councillor Matt Hall?
Okay,
Neither of them, okay. Okay, we're doing well there. Councillor Bailey, you did have your hand up.
Yes, please, Chairman, thank you. It's the same question I've asked hundreds of times, and I still don't think I've got a satisfactory answer. First of all, I declare I'm a member for Exmouth Littleham, and I'm also a member of Exmouth Town Council. Now, this procedure has been going on for many, many, many years, and there is absolutely nothing to show for it, which I don't find amusing at all. Obviously, some people in the room do, but I don't. There's been hundreds of thousands of pounds spent on this alleged project to no event. Nothing's happened whatsoever, and I think it's a disgrace. And as regarding transparency, we still don't know what they're intending to put in there. We've had 9 public consultations so far. We're going to need a 10th to find out what's happening. Now, we're always asking what's happening. We're always getting the same bland reply, which doesn't actually mean a lot. I, for one, am very fed up with it, and a lot of people in Exmouth are. Thank you very much, Chair.
I hear your frustration, Councillor Bailey, and I hope you get some answers soon. Right, who was next? Oh, Councillor Arnott, would you like to come in, intervene on that?
Yes, I never like a council of despair. So I think there has been a lot going on around the Queen's Drive space. I think you can see the challenges, the scale of the challenges in Exmouth. May I call them legacy challenges around the very sad closure of Mickey's in the last week or so, and we have to wish whatever the new business is well there. I think it is an administration, and genuinely I have had much praise for this. It's the action we've taken around making sure there is an Exmouth to actually develop around the sea wall, which is a spectacularly successful project, which has cost an enormous amount of officer time and money. So I think the very fact, if we remember that going back only 3 years, anything happening in Exmouth was just happening kind of behind the scenes, really. A few powerful councillors and a few officers taking some actions. Ironically, I quite often hear people say, "Oh, why don't you?" I tell you what, here's a good idea. Why don't you have some sort of pitch and putt, crazy golf? How about a bit of a lake with some swans, and maybe bring back a little train carriage as well? And that's what I hear. So we're picking up the decisions that were made a few years ago to remove all of that from Exmouth for good or ill. And I understand Councillor Bailey's frustration, but I don't think you can call this a disgrace or disgusting or anything. These things unfortunately take time. There are huge challenges. And I'm confident that this council, this administration has got in place the measures through which we can develop this properly this time around. Thank you.
I was going to, I think Councillor Hookway wanted to address part of your question as well, if you want to give him the time, or do you want to come back and... Okay, Councillor Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in answer to your comments, I don't think it's a disgrace. Clearly, it is something that interests a great number of people in Exmouth, and that's absolutely right. But I think we have done the right thing in being open and transparent. And if we need more consultations, then we will have more consultations. And people of Exmouth will be kept fully briefed, should they wish to do so, about what we're doing and what we're thinking. And I'm also really surprised also to hear an Exmouth member talking about a programme that is trying to look to the future for the town, a town which in August was dealt a really serious blow through the actions of South West Water, which actually drove tourists away from the town. We need this plan, we need to look forward, and we need to show that we have confidence in the town and that we are prepared to do our best by it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Councillor Bailey, do you have a quick...
Very quick. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nick. I understand what you said, and I understand what the Chairman said, but both of those events are not relative to your long drawn-out plan, especially Mickey's closing and the sea wall. I mean, that would have happened anyway. It's nothing to do with your planning and your vision for the future of Exmouth. The majority of people I speak to in Exmouth, I'm on the seafront most days, weather permitting, speak to hundreds of people about this. Why hasn't anything happened? That's a question I get time and time and time again. And all I'm doing is relaying what I'm supposed to do, the views of the people of Exmouth to this council. Thank you very much, Chair.
Again, I hear your frustration, but I think it's probably very right that the time should be taken to get this right, especially when we are facing climate change and everything that's bringing at the moment. Councillor Ledger, do you have a comment?
No, just to propose the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ledger. Is anybody in the room willing to second the... Oh, Councillor Collins, Councillor Bethany Collins is seconding. Right, so we have a duly proposed and seconded recommendation here. I'm minded just to move on now because we've got so much ahead of us. If you are in favour of this recommendation, would you please raise your hand now? And if you are against the recommendation, would you raise your hand now? And if you wish to abstain, would you please raise your hand now? So that's largely carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on to item 12, recommendation from Cabinet, the annual Treasury Management Review. Right, Simon, do you wish to present this, or shall I be asking Councillor Burrock to present it?
I'll present it if I can get my mic working.
Oh, hang on. You can just pop your card on the side of it, Simon.
I was told that.
On the left-hand side, that's it.
That's it.
And by the magic of technology, hopefully.
Look at that. After all that wait, all I'm going to say is that this report went to Cabinet. It's the outturn for 23-24 regarding our annual Treasury management. So that's basically our investments and borrowings. The report went into a lot of detail. The reason it's come to council as part of legislation, it has to be approved. The review has to be approved by council, so it's a recommendation from Cabinet. But to give you reassurance, the investments are in line in the year with our protocols, so in the areas you'd expect and the risks that you'd expect. And also we maintained our borrowing within our prudential indicators, which were adopted at the beginning of the year. So the review that went to Cabinet was basically saying all in order regarding our investments and borrowing.
Thank you, Simon. Right, are there any comments, questions on this recommendation? Oh, Councillor Bruce, please.
Proposed, Chair.
Sorry? Okay, so we have a proposer. Thank you very much. That was very swift. Councillor Barlow, you are to second.
Happy to second, Chair.
Wonderful. That's super. So quick. Right. So moving on swiftly to the vote, then if you are in favour of this recommendation, would you please raise your hand now? And if you are against the recommendation, would you please raise your hand now? And if you wish to abstain, please raise your hand now. That is very unanimously carried, I'd say, actually. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, moving on to item 13, which is the recommendation from Audit and Governance on the application of the local authority backstop. Right, so it's either, yet again, either Simon Davey or Chris Burrop. So who is taking this one? Oh,
I can
Simon
take that,
Davey
Chair.
is. Thank you very much, Simon.
So, as background, you've got a recommendation from the Audit and Governance Committee to Council that a backstop for 21-22 and 22-23 accounts are applied. What the Audit and Governance Committee wants me to do is provide a report to Council to explain the implications of that and to explain a little bit about backstop. So that's what you have on your agenda at Council. The opening line of the report in terms of the audit regime for local authority accounts is broken. So basically only 1% of all local authority bodies have published audited accounts on time, with a backlog of over 1,000 unaudited accounts. So this is a national issue whereby local authorities haven't got audited accounts published on time. In response to that, the government have introduced legislation to draw a line to try and bring all accounts back in line again. So for December the 13th this year, all accounts that aren't signed off that relate to 22-23 backwards will have a backstop applied and a disclaimer, so they won't have an opinion put on them. So that's quite a big thing in the local government world in terms of stewardship. So there'll be a number of accounts for lots of authorities that actually won't have an audit opinion applied. This is for us, applies to us, so that there was a letter that went to the Audit and Governance Committee saying that Grant Thornton, our external auditors, are proposing to apply a backstop for 21-22 and 22-23. So that means those accounts have been published. We have published those. They've been out to public consultation, but they won't get audited by the deadline of December. As we move forward, the government have produced deadlines going forward where accounts need to be audited and published for future dates. So for 23-24 accounts, they are in January next year. We're in line to have those audited. So we've published them, they've been out to public consultation, and they're actually being audited at the current time. So we expect those to be audited and published within the deadline. And then as we go forward, we expect to meet those demands. The report goes into details around why nationally we're in this position. And there's a number of issues linked to it. Local authority accounts are particularly complex. In terms of you take a normal set of accounts and then you apply local government rules to them that have a lot of contra entries to try and force public sector accounts to look like private sector accounts. It makes it very complicated. There aren't many accountants who can produce those accounts. There aren't many accountants who can audit those accounts, and that's partly the resource issue that we've got into this position. So as part of the government proposals, they brought in the legislation to bring in the backstop, but the next stage is to actually look at the accounts and how they can be published in a way that can be produced easier and I think understood easier by the public as well. So that's the next stage of this. But it's just bringing to council the implications. We're not alone by far in this, but the implications that we'll have disclaimed accounts for those 2 years, but likely going forward in that although we'll meet the deadlines for audited accounts, there will be, because of the balances brought forward, previous year's comparisons, it's likely that we'll have a disclaimer for 23-24 and possibly into 24-25. But again, that'll be the same for most authorities. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. So does anybody have any questions for Simon about this? I mean, it sounds bizarre, but my words, not Simon's. But if anybody has any questions for Simon, please do ask. Councillor Barlow. I couldn't see.
It's
that.
not
Sorry.
a question, Chair. They are incredibly complicated, and I don't know how anyone actually understands them, but I was going to propose it when you're ready.
Thank you. So we have a proposal already. Does anybody wish to second them, or does anybody? Oh, hang on. Councillor Burrop.
Happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Right, so we have a proposer and a seconder. If everybody's happy, we can move straight to a vote on this. It's almost a noting, in fact, isn't it? Because there's not very much we can actually do about it. So if you are in favour of this recommendation, would you please raise your hand now? If you're against the recommendation, please raise your hand now. And if you wish to abstain, please raise your hand now. And I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry, at this point, I need to ask two people to leave the room. They know who they are. They're about to leave, because we're moving on to item 14. I'm just going to wait for them to go. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to item 14, which is the appointment of the new Director of Housing and Health and a new Director of Place, which is item 14 on the agenda. I'm now going to hand over to Joe Fellows. Welcome back, Joe. And would you please present your report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, as you probably aware from previous senior appointments that we've done recently, within our constitution, both chief executive and director appointments have to be confirmed by full council following a recruitment process that's led by the interviewing subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of obviously members. Over the summer, we've been doing the Director of Place and Housing and Health recruitment. If you remember, early, sort of late spring, we brought a report around bringing in a fourth director within the senior leadership structure, which is the Director of Place, and then we were replacing the Director of Housing and Health as well. The advert went out in June with a closing date of the 21st of July. We had a really good response. And we worked again with an executive search agency who we've used previously for senior recruitment, which is very common. It's the norm really with these sorts of level roles. There were then technical interviews in August, and then the full assessment centre of the sort of final shortlist of appointments happened on the 4th of September. And as you can see in the report, that involved psychometric tests, group exercises, and the formal interview with the interviewing subcommittee. I'm really pleased that as a result of that, the interviewing subcommittee have made recommendations that Andrew Wood should be appointed Director of Place and that Catherine Stark appointed Director of Housing and Health. As you're aware, both of these were covering the role on an interim basis prior to that. So, you know, they were up against very stiff competition. It's, you know, good to see that we've got internal people who, you know, been able to develop and progress on to permanent roles at that level. And it's proposed that they both start or backdated to 1st of October. So that's a very brief summary of the situation. Obviously happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joe. So does anybody have any? Councillor Barlow, do you have questions?
Yeah, just a question, Chair. As we are obviously a council looking to get to carbon zero as quickly as we can I confirm that these people will be living local-ish to the council so that when they attend, they won't be burning carbon unnecessarily?
That is not really something for us to be privy. I think I'm going to hand over to Jo on this, but I think I can anticipate her answer.
I think we can't really comment on people's personal circumstances in terms of where they live and their travel arrangements. That's their personal choices around travel. You know, it's not business mileage or anything, so we can't comment on that.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Arnott wanted to intervene at this point, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Ledger.
Yes, just very briefly to say thank you very much to Joe for the report. Obviously, this has come to Cabinet originally. I'm very much hoping that Council will approve of the decision that the Cabinet made at the time. This is the natural fruit of a process that we began in July 2023. We'll remember we wrote to the Secretary of State. The Council was facing some serious challenges. We triggered a peer review, which was a fantastic process for the council, for members and for officers as well. It was full of praise, which was good, but it also identified and helped us identify different ways of doing things. We had a change of personnel in senior management, as you will remember, and I'm absolutely delighted that what was identified were these two new roles, in effect, the Director of Place and the Director of Housing. Director of Place allows us to look, I think, in a more visionary way at planning, perhaps a more challenging way as well. It's very important in terms of the new community as well. Director of Housing, many of us have known for years and years about the challenges this council has had about housing. It's been compared to a tanker. That tanker started to turn with the appointment of Tracy to what is now Catherine's, or will be hopefully Catherine's role if you vote that way in a minute. With Catherine coming in and with Tracy having already got that going, I'm confident that that too is starting to correct. We will then have a new 5-strong senior management team. So apart from the normal statutory roles you have to have, which is Simon doing finance, Mel doing legal, and Tracy as chief exec, we've got sitting alongside them very closely Andy and Catherine, who have already developed brilliant relationships further down the council. So this is a big moment. I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in this process, cross-party, people like Jenny from who was part of all the interview panels as well, Aurora who's not here today. So it was a fantastic process, so thank you for that. And if I may make so bold, Chair, if I'm not stealing Councillor Ledger's thunder, I'd just like to propose this. Thank you.
Councillor Ledger, you were next, and then Councillor Sarah Jackson, please.
I feel like my nan's just said a comment to me. Look at his face. Like
No, I just thought you probably wanted to propose
No, I'm
it.
honestly, I'm fine with seconding, Chair. I think we're really
You
lucky
did steal his thunder.
to have the calibre of candidates that we have, and that can only be good for the council and it can only be good for our residents. So happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I mean, I was putting my hand up to second anyway, or propose, whichever came first, but I just think it would be nice to extend congratulations to the newly appointed officers as well.
They're not quite newly appointed. We haven't voted yet. Does anybody else have any questions for Joe about the process or anything else? No? Okay. So we have a motion to appoint Catherine and Andrew, which is proposed and seconded. I think we should move on to voting on that now. So if you are in favour of appointing these two people to these two roles, would you please raise your hand now? If you are against appointing them, would you please raise your hand now? And if you wish to abstain, please raise your hand now. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And congratulations to the two new officers who can now return. Yeah, we'll just have them fetched from the kitchen. Congratulations, Andrew. Congratulations, Catherine. And thank you very much for your work to date, and long may it continue, because things are looking up. It's great. Right, okay. Where are we? Right, okay. So we're moving on to our motions. Number one of 3 motions. The motion that we have before us is about the winter fuel allowance that we all made declarations about. And it is proposed by Councillor Riddell and Councillor Goodman. So who wishes to speak first? Who's actually the actual proposer? Sorry. It's Councillor Goodman. Okay. Councillor Goodman, would you wish to speak on your motion?
Before I start, Andrew's going to put some minor amendments to the motion to recognise the work the poverty team are already doing, and it's right that we reflect that in the motion, which I wasn't aware of until I was speaking to the poverty team and the portfolio over the last week. So,
okay, so you have an amendment.
Put those minor adjustments up, please, Andrew.
So we have an amended text to talk about right now.
It's very little change.
Oh, golly, can we blow that up a little bit, please, Andrew? Is that possible? Because I'm struggling already. Oh. Yep, that's perfect. I think, can everybody see that?
Yeah, in the original motion, it said commence, but they've already commenced, so it is important we say the right things, which is to continue, which I think is the right thing to change on the evidence we've now got.
Right. So I thank you very much, Councillor Goodman. So I would say in the interest of accessibility, if this kind of stuff could happen in advance of the meeting, that would be fantastic, because I know several of us are very, very short-sighted, to put it mildly, and it's quite difficult to focus on. Yeah, but
Yeah, I
thank
think,
you very
Chairman, after
much.
talking
Thank you very much for
to
changing
Melanie
that.
and Andrew today, I think we do need to look at the way motions, amendments are dealt with, and I think we've learned something from these. Okay.
Thank you. So, Councillor Ledger, it wouldn't be usual for you to speak at this point. Okay.
So with regards to the proposed amendment, is it proposed that that is the full text now and all other parts are being removed? Or is that just substituting the second paragraph?
So this is the second paragraph of the actual resolution. So the last but one basically the last but one paragraph in the text in the agenda, where it starts with that the council urgently commences a significant awareness campaign. That's all going to be replaced by this. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sorry, Melanie.
So I just also wanted to clarify there's one other change, which was it did talk about at the end about promotion in the local press and by letters. It now says, and the East Devon Residents app. So that is a further change in there.
Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Councillor Goodman, do you wish to proceed?
Yes, thank you.
Microphone, please, Councillor Goodman.
That's important. Yes, the motion before you today is important for our pensioners in East Devon and all pensioners throughout the UK. And I hope everyone will be able to support this motion. The motion is calling on the leader and the chief executive to write to the government, urging them to pause the Labour government's intention to stop winter fuel payments and work towards finding a solution to support some of the most vulnerable people in society. Now, I was hoping that Cabinet would have agreed to write to the government when I put the proposal to them on September the 5th. Surprisingly, the leader would not take this action and said I could bring a motion to the council, and that's exactly what I'm doing. But I have to admit, I think he was right, because it gives all members here the opportunity to contribute to this important debate affecting a number of our residents. Pensioners are given so much to our country, with many elderly people having served in wars to protect us. I turn to the excellent East Devon Economic Review document of October 2023. The report shows we have over 45,000 pensioners in East Devon, the fifth highest of the 322 councils. 30% of our residents are retired, and we have 50% in Sidmouth alone. No one can argue that cutting the winter fuel allowance will affect our district. The service has identified several residents in East Devon who will lose out on winter fuel allowance, and they have already, alongside the Citizen Advice, started to contact these pensioners to encourage them to apply for pension credit. I say this should not be necessary if the government pulls this, but I congratulate the service on taking so a proactive stance in protecting our vulnerable residents. We are told that it is necessary for pensioners to make up the fictitious black hole of 22 million. Well, I say we should not be throwing our pensioners in that hole to fill it. We are seeing a Labour government taking money from pensioners after a Labour government had introduced the winter fuel allowance in 1997. When it was introduced, they said we are simply not prepared to allow another winter to go by when pensioners are fearful of turning on their heating, even on the coldest winter days. But now I assume the Labour government are prepared for pensioners to fear of being able to heat their homes. In 26 years, every government, irrespective of what else was happening in the country, have ensured that some of the most vulnerable in our society would be protected. The decision comes at a time when energy prices are set to increase by 10%. This will equate to £149 for an average bill. This will no doubt mean some of pensioners they will have to choose between keeping warm or eating. Simply, pensioners will choose eat or heat. In 2024, or at any time, this should never be a choice. This may cost lives, as we've heard from somebody today, and will certainly put additional pressure on the already stretched NHS. Numerous councils, including Devon, have already passed a motion urging the government to change their minds, and the Age UK have started a petition with already 558,000 signatures. They include Pauline, 82, who said, "I'm a carer to my husband who has Alzheimer's and is registered blind. We live in a park home and we need to heat our home night and day in the winter. We just will not cope." We know in East Devon we have challenges regarding disabled people, and national figures released show that 71% of disabled pensioners, about 1.6 million people, and 83% of people over 80 will lose their entitlement to the payment. This is just not right. East Devon have one of the most able and proactive poverty teams of any council in the UK, in my opinion. And I commend them for the excellent work that they always do and are doing now to help our pensioners and stop them suffering in East Devon. But we also have councillors, and I ask them, can they play their part in promoting pensioners' entitlement to pension credits to our pensioners? I think we can do a job there. I understand the argument that not all pensioners may not need the winter fuel allowance, and that's a fair comment. However, the government must get the system right before changing it. They must be protecting the most vulnerable people in our society. To me, this motion is not a political motion. It's our council caring and making a difference to our pensioners, and I hope everybody can support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. I think nobody would disagree that our teams are doing sterling work in all their different places to try and help alleviate poverty in this district. Councillor Brown, you're seconding this motion. Do you wish to say anything?
Labour's ill-considered decision to means test the winter fuel allowance previously paid to all pensioners comes at a time when the utility providers are increasing their charges. This will mean 82% of poorer, older people, including many aged over 80, disabled or living alone, will lose the benefit, according to Age UK. Under Chancellor Rachel Reeves' proposal, 23% of the 10.3 million pensioners who will lose out are living in or just above the poverty line, according to reports. These reports include 800,000 octogenarians and 1.1 million people living with disabilities. This also means 1 million pensioners who live alone and live in or just above the poverty line will no longer get the payment. The Treasury published impact assessments into the policy changes on September the 13th in response to a Freedom of Information request, just 3 days after the Commons debated on winter fuel payment. The Department of Works and Pensions found 83% of pensioners over 80 would lose out on payments. Labour MP and Chair of the Works and Pensions Committee, Deborah Abrahams, claimed she had genuine concerns about these people who were just above that threshold and still remained in poverty, but still followed her party line and voted in favour of abolishing the winter payment for those on pension credits. Caroline Abrahams of Age UK said analysis suggested 79% or 1.4 million female pensioners living in poverty will now be ineligible for the payment. Also, research supports our worst fears that unless ministries change tact and quickly, millions of older people on low and modest incomes could be facing potential disaster as the weather chills. It has recently been published that to receive the winter fuel payment for 24-25, you need to be in receipt of a benefit for at least 1 day between the 16th and 22nd of September 24. Please vote in favour of the motion.
Thank Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm sure, we know that we also have a whole demographic of women who are badly affected by pension problems, and so it will be doubly problematic for them. On my list, I have Councillor Bruce, but I think Councillor Arnott wishes to intervene first. Shall we? Councillor Arnott.
Yes, thank you.
You used to
Only
intervene
because
now.
I think probably somebody from Cabinet should reply to this very
be nice.
very welcome motion, and Councillor Hawkins isn't here today, and it might fall under him. So no, I'm not going to say it. It's a political motion if you're looking at it from the Labour point of view. Somebody just has to say that. But let's move on to being more constructive about what I think we may be able to also do. So, of course, I'm sure that the Chief Executive and I would be happy to write a letter. I think one thing that Councillor Brown has already made as a good point is about a particular group. There are residents who have less capital or are fractionally over the pension credit threshold, and they're going to be particularly left financially vulnerable. So if members do take this motion forward, I'd suggest that Tracy and I put a paragraph in there specifically highlighting them to the Chancellor of the Exchequer for special consideration in the winter fuel payment, the art of the possible. I think on the second part of the motion, I think it is important just to summarise what it is this council already does, and Councillor Goodman's praise for the service is very welcome. So members may remember that in August this year, I signed a letter with other organisations around the country asking for the continuation of the Household Support Fund to be extended beyond September 2024. If you look at our revenues and benefits service plan for 24-25, the council had already committed to carry out a pensionable age take-up campaign for housing benefit and council tax reduction. And this is because our officers have seen a steady decline, ironically, in our pensionable age caseload. In addition, it's nationally recognised that this cohort are less likely to access benefits that they're entitled to receive. It's thought this can be to do with a combination of reasons: pride, worrying about what other people think, lack of knowledge about benefits, or the qualifying criteria on knowing how to claim. So what our officers have been doing, with the government now removing winter fuel payment from those not on pension credit, they have understood this already, that it's even more important to campaign proactively. So the benefits team has already started work on a take-up campaign prior to the announcement, but has now been widened to reflect the removal of the winter fuel payment. I'm delighted that they are working closely with the Citizens Advice Bureau, East Devon, who were in here having a meeting with me and Tracy and Dan earlier in the year. They'll be attending events and surgeries around the district at key locations and linking in with services already running in the voluntary sector. The financial resilience team have already identified 221 households from our housing benefit and council tax reduction caseload that may be entitled to pension credit, and are already in the process of attempting to make contact with these households and advising them to make an application. This is being done initially by phone, and then by letters, and if necessary by home visits. It's planned that this element should be completed by the end of October. Citizens Advice, and thank you to them, will be assisting with the application process when required. And plans also include publicity via the various communication channels, press release, tenants newsletters, letters, social media, leaflets in key locations, and so forth. The government have announced further funding through the Household Support Fund that I mentioned earlier to cover October to March. And although we're still waiting for actual guidance on that, our officers are looking at those pensionable age households who are over the threshold for pension credit but on low incomes in claiming housing benefit or council tax reduction, as mentioned before. From our records, we know that there are around 1,100 households that may fall into this cohort. Within this number, there are 225 claims in receipt of a disability benefit of various kinds. These numbers are of concern, and in particular, the 225 households with a disability due to the increased costs they are likely to face this winter in keeping warm. And our officers are currently working in the targeted support element of the Household Support Fund and will consider an award for this cohort. And a report on this will be presented at our next Cabinet meeting on October 30th of October this year. Finally, just to conclude, our dedicated financial resilience team will continue to support residents by helping maximise income and minimise expenditure as they normally do. And as part of that work, they will collaborate with our partners to address the underlying cause of financial hardship and poverty that you may remember from our poverty strategy meetings before. I think I'll leave it at that, Chair, but I will, subject to anybody, I'm guessing probably Councillor Goodman is going to propose his motion, Councillor Brown second, but I will certainly be voting with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think thank you for mentioning revenues and benefits, because I think they do amazing work every single day, completely unsung. So a big shout out to Revs and Bens for the work that they do, and I think it's pretty groundbreaking in the country, isn't it? So if you become aware of anybody in your area who you think could use our services, then please do signpost them towards Revs and Bens in the first instance, but other services are available as well. So yeah. Councillor Bruce, you were next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief because Councillor Arnott has covered some of the things that I was going to mention. But he is actually correct in his first statement to say this is slightly political. I found it somewhat disappointing when I went to look online at some of the petitions that were floating around, that one or two of them had been, I don't want to use the word hijacked, but they were certainly not in the way of, say, the Age UK petition, which is a straightforward question. There were a couple that added into it, maybe suggestions from the Conservative group who were looking to add into other things. And I thought that's a great shame, because it actually diluted the target of the petitions. And I suspect if they reflect on what that happened in the future, they may get a better response if they keep it to a single item rather than add extra bits in. It's ironic that this would be my first year to apply for this, and I find myself 88 pence short. You know, it's crazy. And this is a soft target for the government, and I think it's baffled many in Westminster. And I just hope that there is now a momentum to steer the government away from this particular step, because the irony is that if everybody took up this particular pension credit, not only would the government's aim of filling that hole disappear very, very rapidly, but year on year thereafter, those that would get it would be claiming even more benefits from the government. So I think it's very poorly thought out. And it's a cruel and disrespectful and completely unacceptable step. And I fully support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. We have Councillor Hayward first and then Councillor Heath, please.
Thank you. It is unfortunate that this has been politicised by the proposer and seconder, because, you know, this, if you took the words Labour out of this, it would still apply. You could say the government, you write to the government, you write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But both speakers laboured the point, no pun intended, on that it is a Labour government. And it's ill-judged. I mean, other speakers are completely right. But I find it slightly disingenuous that since 2019, when I've been elected member here, we've never had a motion put forward about the £20 universal credit cut that affected millions of disadvantaged and people in need in this country. We've never had a motion citing that the UK state pension is amongst the lowest in Europe. We've never had a motion representing women born in the 50s, the WASPy women, who have had tens of thousands of pounds stolen from them. Where were these motions? But here we are in the run-up to a county council election, suddenly we have this. But it's happened because the government of the time has made this ill-judged decision. And yes, there are better targets to attack and seek funding from to fill this gap. The energy companies, for a case in point. But that could have been done by the previous government as well as this one. So I will be supporting this, and I thank them for bringing it forward. I just think if you're going to do it, do not politicise it in this way. It just cheapens the argument and the point you're trying to make, which is very valid and laudable. And yes, we should write and express our concern for our residents, but there are other residents who are equally in need who will gain no benefit from this. And I'd like us to represent them, and indeed our poverty team do that day in, day out, using all the tools and resources that they're available to them. So, yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Next up, we have Councillor Heath, please, and then Councillor Olive.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see this as necessarily being entirely a political decision. I think if we look back, yes, the Conservatives made lots of errors as well. Labour has made a big error of judgment with this, in my opinion, so I'm happy to support Councillor Goodman and Councillor Brown's motion. I think this transcends politics. It's about whether or not the decision made by the government of the time is proportional and relevant, you know, to the needs of the people in which it affects. And you know, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heath. Councillor Olive, you're next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think having heard the room, I was slightly irritated, to be honest, by how much this had been politicised by the proposer and the seconder, but hearing what other members have said, I'm not going to comment.
Thank you, Councillor Olive. Councillor Faithful, you are up now.
Thank you, Chair. In some ways, I agree some way with where the government was going, that some people with some generous pension schemes really don't need this, but the formula they've come out with is quite clearly wrong, and I'll leave it there, so less than 3 minutes.
Well done, Councillor Faithful, thank you. Councillor Dumper, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I must declare an interest as chairman of the Liberal Democrats in this constituency, in the Exmouth and Exeter East part of the constituency, part of this district. What I was going to say was that in terms of what the motion says, the vast majority of those who are political party members are in fact not, they are non-government parties in Parliament. And those members here represent parties that have opposed the government's action. There is in fact only one government party member on here. So despite whether we say it's politicised or not, I would very much, both as a Liberal Democrat and as a local councillor, support the motion that's going through here. And I would ask for everybody, whether they are aligned to a political party or not, to support that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dumper. Are there any more comments? Councillor Brown, you wish to come back in. Are you going to summate?
Councillor Hayward. So just to correct Councillor Hayward on the statement that he made, he wasn't a councillor at the time because he wasn't a councillor, but the Waspies did come up at Sidmouth when we was there, and they came down and presented everything. So the Waspies have been talked about at council, but before your time.
I think the much lamented Councillor Ranger was one such Waspie one. I think it was Councillor Gardner, wasn't it? And Councillor Ranger who spearheaded that motion. Okay. Right. Does anybody else wish to comment on this motion? Oh, Councillor Ray Collins, please.
Thank you. It's not only pensioners that are struggling, there are lots of people in East Devon are struggling. I dealt with a case with a lady, 64 years old. She moved into sheltered accommodation last January. 2 months later, her toilets were blocked up. And I went round to see, and what she was doing, she had a rubber plunger, and she was pushing a human waste down around the bend in her toilet, so the drain blocked up between the bungalow that she lived in and the manhole cover outside. And she was doing that to save. She was doing that to save water.
Thank you.
And she done exactly the same with her washing up. She had her sink full of water and dishes, but she never emptied it. And there's caused a lot of problem. And Ian Williams was very good. They came round very quickly and freed the drains out.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Yeah, water is, and especially heating water is very expensive. It's true. Councillor Johns, I think you might be up next.
Thank you. There's lots and lots of discussion being had about this, but everybody's saying the same thing. They all agree. So can we just move the motion forward instead of just chuntering about it? Thank you.
That is the most extraordinary proposal. Right, so we already have a motion that is proposed and seconded. Everybody seems broadly in agreement. So with that in mind, is everybody willing to move to the vote? Right. If you are in favour of this motion, would you please raise your hand? If you are against the motion, would you please raise your hand now? And if you'd like to abstain, would you please raise your hand now? Okay, we have one abstention and everybody else largely carried it. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on to item 16, which is motion 2, housing concerns. And next up I have Councillor Riddell and Councillor Goodman. I don't know who wishes to speak first. Councillor Riddell?
Thank you, Chair. So, members, I would like to propose that we defer this motion and that I work with the portfolio holder and officers to bring back an amended motion in December. The rationale behind doing this is that since the motion was proposed, I've received communication from Councillor Ledger on when the housing stock survey will be available to this council along with a presentation. This suspension does not detract from the enormous challenges the service faces in tackling damp and mould in homes and improving the condition of much of our housing stock. It is critical that we all work together and support the current administration to reduce the number of housing complaints, and I look forward to working with the portfolio holder and the officers on this issue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Riddell. So that means that you're not, you're withdrawing the motion at this point. So, I see that Councillor Ledger, I think we're deferring it to December, are we? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So Councillor Ledger, I think you probably already had something all prepared, didn't you? Would you like to go ahead and say what you
No,
prepared?
it was really just to echo the comments of Councillor Riddell. This is a cross-party issue and something that is affecting our tenants and residents. It's a really high priority for us and we are doing a lot of work in there, but there is still work to be done. And I think over the next few months is about getting the foundations in, working with the Housing Review Board, the directors and the service managers to really get this right so that we are delivering for our residents. So thank you for the deferral, Councillor Riddell, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ledger. I think I speak for everybody when I say that this is a hugely important topic and it very much is central to what we do. Right, so we're pleased to hear that we do not have to vote on that then because it has now been deferred. Right, motion 17, motion on notice number 3, ecological crisis, which is proposed by Councillor Jess Bailey and seconded by Councillor Melanie Martin. So I'm going to call on Councillor Bailey to present her motion, please.
Thank you very much. It's essential that we do everything we can to halt the decline of swifts. The swift population has fallen by almost 60% in the last 30 years, and it's estimated that there will be fewer than 40,000 pairs of swifts remaining in the UK by 2025. There are estimated to be around 50 pairs of swifts in Honiton, and there's been some really excellent work by the Swift Support Network in installing swift boxes in Honiton. I was really inspired by seeing and hearing the swifts swooping in and out of the boxes that had been installed at the Beehive, and this led me to bring forward this notice of motion. I feel that as a council we should be using our premises, particularly our headquarters, to support swifts and should have swift boxes on our buildings. But when I walked around the outside of EDDC HQ here at Blackdown House to see what boxes or bricks we had provided for swifts, I realised that this building, which was only completed in the last 5 years, there was actually no ecological mitigation. I couldn't see anything, not just for swifts, but for bats or any birds at all. So my notice of motion evolved because then I started looking at the wider issue of ecological mitigation at Blackdown House. There is an ecological crisis which sees the UK in the bottom 10% of countries globally for biodiversity and is the worst G7 nation for biodiversity loss. You can imagine my extreme disappointment to then discover that there were conditions in the 2016 planning permission for Blackdown House relating to bats and bird boxes and habitat piles for slowworms, but no one's actually installed them. This would be bad for any applicant, but for EDDC as a public authority and the planning authority not to have its own house in order is really shocking. The design, build and fit out of and relocation to Blackdown House cost 8.7 million. That EDDC did not comply with its own ecology requirements is very poor and raises questions about what went awry with the project management back in 2018-19, as surely complying with planning conditions is a fundamental part of project management. It also raises significant concerns about the extent to which, as a planning authority, we monitor the implementation of ecology conditions across the district. How many thousands of other wildlife conditions like those at Blackdown House are languishing, ignored and unfulfilled, and at what cost to our wildlife? Thank you to Councillor Melanie Martin for seconding my notice of motion and all the other councillors who supported tabling this notice of motion, which meant it could come forward today. So I would urge the council to support my notice of motion, install the bat boxes and bird boxes as required in the 2016 planning permission at Blackdown House as a matter of urgency, to install boxes specifically for swifts at Blackdown House, noting the excellent work carried out elsewhere in Honiton to support swifts, and identify and implement further nature supporting initiatives for the Blackdown House site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Martin, do you wish to speak to this motion now, or do you want to wait until after other people have spoken? It's your choice.
Now, please.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so the facts and statistics that Councillor Bailey has just outlined about the UK biodiversity performance make me feel ashamed. And I'll give you 3 more stats that further highlight the need for this motion to be passed. Firstly, the number of swifts in the UK has dropped by 2/3 since 1995. Swallows are half as common as they were a decade ago. And thirdly, the government has reported that half of the country's birds declined between 2015 and 2020. That's half. The remedy is simple and low cost. We need to provide breeding spaces and habitats for them to feed in the form of bird boxes, pollinating plants and hedgerows. I understand that our new local plan will have provision for bird boxes in new homes, and we must be vigilant and ensure that this happens when new houses are built. We must also set an example by doing what we promised here at the EDDC offices and implement bird and bat boxes, hedge banks and habitat piles. When I was elected in 2023, one of my promises was to implement measures to protect endangered species and their habitats. Therefore, I gladly second this motion and implore you to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martin. So I know that we have a number of signatories to this motion. Do any of the signatories wish to speak? I think I had Councillor Bruce already, who was one of the signatories. Councillor Bruce, do you want to intervene now?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is such a simple step, and it is quite a disgrace that we have a building that we're sitting in now that hasn't complied with its own planning policies. When this motion came forward, I did a little bit of digging, and I went and found Brighton City Council, as I understand it, and I hope I'm correct, now have a mandatory statement within their planning policy that all new dwellings must include swift bricks. These are small costs in the scheme of things when it comes to a development. And ironically, one of the main manufacturers is down in Cornwall, so we would be doing our bit for the southwest industry. So I would urge all members to back this one. It's a simple thing that we should be complying with our own rules, and I would like to see it go further. This motion doesn't cover it, but I would like to see maybe a look through our planning policy where we can make it like we have at Brighton City Council as a mandatory statement when a new development comes forward. Thank you, Chair.
That's probably something to come through the local plan process. Do you want me to, come in after the other person? Okay, okay, so you'll be after Chris Burrop, who is up next.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Councillor Bruce and, of course, with Councillors Martin and Jess Bailey. It is shameful that EDC hasn't implemented the ecological conditions associated with this project of the wonderful Blackdown House, and somewhat embarrassing. Well, I'll leave it at that. We should have, we haven't, we must implement those ecological conditions, and I'd urge members to support this motion in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bott. It's worth saying that our knowledge of how to save threatened species is evolving very quickly and all the time. And I don't know whether this building was delivered under such demands. But obviously we know more now. Councillor Olive, would you like to intervene at this point?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to very briefly observe for members' benefits. Hopefully you've all seen the correspondence I sent you all last Friday regarding the forward plan for Strategic Planning Committee, and no doubt everyone in the room therefore knows that Chapter 13 of the Emerging Local Plan, which covers protecting and enhancing our biodiversity and geodiversity, will be coming to strategic planning on the 5th of November, and I hope I'm not being presumptuous when I say I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you, Chair.
Gosh, that sounds like a three-line whip. Councillor Arnott, you want to come in next?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'll be very brief. And I obviously agree with everything on the ecological side. I won't comment on that. I'm not overqualified. Very interested that Councillor Bailey mentioned the period of design, construction, delivery, 2018-2019. I am tempted to do an amendment, but I don't think so. I think I'll write to the Chair of Scrutiny, because I do think we do, just to suggest that this might be a piece of work that Scrutiny does. It was always a concern that the officer whose role it was to deliver Blackdown House left the organisation, who was then the Deputy Chief Executive, and in fact very soon thereafter another officer in a delivery role, so to speak, across the organisation also left. So I think we need to have a little look at that through Scrutiny and just find out perhaps what actually happened. I think another part of the work that I'm confident is happening through the planning department at the moment is around the not very good record historically of things like enforcement on planning, and I completely take the point that Councillor Bailey is making. You know, if we can't enforce on ourselves here, then what are we for? And that is something the administration, I'm sure members know, are really honing in on. But we need to resource that better. We need to pursue that across the district. There are plenty of other people we know who are living in places or have got trading places that quite possibly don't accord with their original planning conditions, and we need a little bit of a root and branch review of that. But I'll certainly be voting for the motion, and then I think writing to the Chair of Scrutiny and suggesting, if anybody else will support me, that we have a little look at this. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Arnott. Next up we have Councillor Fernley, I believe, who is one of the signatories.
Thank you. Yes, I absolutely support this motion. I'm not going to say what these guys have already said, but we've got car parks that have got missing trees, failed planting. So it'll be absolutely wonderful to get the things up to scratch, have a few small trees around the car park, which will help provide a little bit of shade for us and wildlife, and do our bit to help the local nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fernley. Next up we had Councillor Ledger, I believe.
Thanks, Chair. Completely in support of this motion. The only thing that I was wanting to raise is, as you said, Chair, we're quite a few years on from when the original planning was implemented. So would it be prudent to include in the motion that we do it to modern day standards, because obviously technology has evolved since then, and something that was implemented possibly 8 years ago, there could be something completely different on the market now that is actually better. And I don't know what, I don't know the details enough to say, but just I think we need to encapsulate that into the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always valuable to have motions such as this brought to council because it does bring us up to date, and it provides a sort of mid-year check on what we're doing and whether it's still the right thing to do. Next up, we have Councillor Jenny Brown, please.
Right, yeah, totally agree with this motion. We at the Town Council, Huntingdon Town Council, have been very involved with the Swift boxes, which is why we've got them all installed in the Beehive with Councillor McCullum. But when you're doing all these houses, you also got to be aware that swifts eat flies. So they need sort of pollinate. They do everything on the wing, everything, apart from feeding their babies in their nest, and they need an awful lot of flies. So when you're building houses, you've got to have somewhere where you have got a lot of biodiversity as well. Otherwise, yeah, totally agree with all this. Any animals, love animals.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, next up, Councillor Barlow, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let Council know that I have asked for scrutiny to look at enforcement as an issue and the planning generally in going forward, and we're waiting for a reply on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barlow. Next up, we have Councillor Haggerty, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, like previous motion, we're all saying the same thing. I suggest we go for a vote.
We have one more speaker and then we'll go to the vote. And that counts, oh, and then we'll call Jess back in. So Councillor Heath first and then back to Jess and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, we have house martins in Beer quite a lot actually, and it's my understanding they're part of the same family as swifts and swallows, and they too are at risk. So we need to protect all of these three fantastic little birds, and we watch them from the garden catching flies and insects on the wing. Fascinating.
Absolutely, they get rid of flies as well, even better. Councillor Jess Bailey, you're back on, and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you very much. I would like to see this notice of motion as it is, with the but I'm happy for it to be any additional measures, because we should have complied with these, and I'm happy if there's going to be extra measures, but I don't want to see any modification of what's in there, because as planning authority we should have introduced that however many years ago. And I also just wanted to say I totally take on board Councillor Jenny Brown's comment about the need for insects. So I really hope that the landscaping and the planting is going to be really suitable for insects to support the additional wildlife. We've got some really excellent people in East Devon District Council, including excellent ecologists, and I think they'll be very well placed to supplement what's in the current notice of motion with any additional measures that they feel is appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I think the planning system going forward is also focusing a lot more on net biodiversity gain. So I'm looking forward to things evolving for the better in the future. With that in mind, I'm minded to call this to a vote. I think we pretty much agree, all of us, so I'm not anticipating any last minute amendments or anything. So it's been proposed and seconded by Councillors Bailey and Martin, and so all we need to do now is to vote on it. So if you are in agreement of this motion, would you please raise your hands now? And if you're against it, would you please raise your hand now? And if you wish to abstain, raise your hand now, and that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Why did I just switch my microphone off? That was silly. Right, next up we have item 18, which is the appointment of Member Champion for Arts and Culture. Now, Councillor Whibley has had to step back for professional reasons, and our nomination is Councillor Ollie Davey. Councillor Whibley.
Could I just, at this point, having done this role for, 5 years, I'd just like to say thank you to officers Charlie Plowden and Ruth, who was latterly at the, who was previously at the Thelma Hubert Gallery, and Sarah, the cultural person now. It's been really, really good fun, but I think it would be good to let somebody else have a go now. I like the fact you said professional reasons. It implies I'm a professional, so thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your time served, Councillor Whibley. I think Councillor Hookway wants to intervene at this point.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you to Councillor Joe Whibley for all his hard work as Member Champion, and happy to propose a recommendation of Councillor Ollie Davey as the Member Champion for Arts and Culture, who I'm sure will do an excellent job. Thank you.
Right, so I have Councillor Hookway who has proposed Councillor Davey. Does anybody wish to second? Oh, Councillor Dumper would like to second Councillor Davey. Right, fantastic. Does anybody wish to ask any questions or say anything? Because if not, we shall go straight to a vote. Okay. If you are in favour of Councillor Davies stepping up to this role, would you please raise your hand now? If you're against it, would you please raise your hand now? That was a very long hand, Councillor Whibley. And if you would like to abstain, would you please raise your hand now? I think that's very, very easily carried. Thank you very much, everybody. That is not a bad idea at all. Right, we perceive that we have been in this meeting for quite a long time now, and that there may be a need for a swift comfort break, not wishing to draw on the previous motion. So we will now have a 5-minute break to permit people to ablute. Hang on a second. We've just realised something. There's no point having a break now because we're going to Part B afterwards. So we may as well do Part B from now, and then any members of the public who are present may then leave. So I'll just do the formalities on that. Okay. So item 19, in accordance with the Local Government Access to Information Act of 1985, we're now moving into Part B, and we are going to pass a resolution that the press and public are excluded from the meeting under Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972 on the basis that if they were present during the business to be transacted, there would be a likelihood of disclosure of exempt information within the meaning of Schedule